Since the earliest days of wrestling, the classic formula has always been face versus heel. It makes perfect sense. The entire industry thrives on the timeless battle of good guy versus bad guy. And that holds true not just in WWE, but across the wrestling world. That's why it stands out whenever wrestling decides to break that mold and pit two fan favorites against each other. Sometimes it's a way to set up a future heel turn. Other times, it's simply a special attraction to give fans something different. Either way, it's always intriguing to see which star the crowd rallies behind and how the wrestlers adjust to the unique dynamic. In some cases, this type of matchup clicks beautifully, with both faces meshing well and delivering an incredible performance. But other times the chemistry just isn't there, and the whole thing falls flat, leaving fans disappointed. With that in mind, let's look at instances where face versus face worked brilliantly.
Professional wrestling is my life!
The Undertaker versus Batista. It's funny to think that back in 2007, some fans were skeptical about Undertaker versus Batista. While both were talented, neither had a reputation for delivering show-stealing matches, and many believed Taker was past his prime at that point. Most figured their clash for the World Heavyweight Championship would be decent at best, maybe even a bit clunky. Instead, to everyone's surprise, they had amazing chemistry and ended up delivering the best match of the night. It was a chaotic, hard-hitting fight, with Undertaker walking away as champion. Even better, this wasn't just a one-and-done situation. The two went on to have several more matches together, including an excellent Hell in a Cell encounter. In the end, Undertaker managed to push Batista to a new level, turning what could have been forgettable into a classic rivalry that surpassed all expectations. Roddy Piper versus Bret Hart. What originally stemmed from a contract situation turned into an unforgettable showdown. In January 1992, Bret Hart held the Intercontinental Championship, but with his WWE contract nearing its end, there were fears he might leave the company. As a precaution, WWE had Bret drop the title to the Mountie. Just 2 days later, Roddy Piper defeated the Mountie to capture his first ever WWE title. Eventually, Bret chose to stay with WWE, setting up his path to reclaim the gold. The build-up leaned heavily into the real-life friendship between Bret and Piper, but both made it clear they were determined to leave WrestleMania 8 as champion. When the bell rang, they delivered a fantastic match, with Piper briefly teasing a heel turn before deciding against it. In the end, Bret regained the championship, and Piper showed his respect by celebrating with him after the match. The fans were the real winners that night, witnessing one of the greatest Intercontinental title matches of all time. Sting and Lex Luger vs. the Steiners. Every once in a while, WCW managed to get things absolutely right, and one shining example is the first ever Super Brawl. That show featured Sting and Lex Luger teaming up to challenge the Steiner brothers for the WCW World Tag Team titles. There was no grudge or personal rivalry involved, just four of the company's biggest fan favorites squaring off to find out who was the best. The match didn't even hit the 12-minute mark, but it packed in more action than some matches 3 times as long. All 4 stars went full throttle, creating a wild, fast-paced showdown with the momentum constantly shifting and the crowd going crazy the whole way through. It wrapped up with Nikita Koloff blindsiding Sting with a chain, allowing the Steiners to retain. Even with the screwy finish, this remains one of the best tag team matches WCW ever produced. Bret Hart versus the British Bulldog. Just a few months after his showdown with Roddy Piper in 1992, Bret Hart found himself in another face versus face clash. Originally, Bret was supposed to defend the Intercontinental title against Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam that year. But once WWE decided to move the event to London, the plan shifted, and Bret's new challenger became Davey Boy Smith. With Davey Boy married to Bret's sister Diana, WWE leaned heavily into the family connection during the build-up, adding an extra layer of personal drama to the story. Once the bell rang, both men delivered a performance worthy of the occasion. While Bret has claimed over the years that he had to carry parts of the match, Bulldog still put in a strong showing, especially with the energy of the hometown crowd behind him. In the end, Davey Boy captured the championship, and the two celebrated together afterward in front of a massive London audience, capping off what remains one of the greatest SummerSlam main events of all time. Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. In 1990, WWE took a massive gamble, and it ended up paying off in a big way. With the Ultimate Warrior riding a huge wave of momentum as Intercontinental Champion, it made perfect sense to pair him up with WWE Champion Hulk Hogan. The only problem? Turning Warrior heel wasn't an option. To test the waters, WWE teased the showdown during the Royal Rumble, when Hogan and Warrior found themselves alone in the ring. The crowd's thunderous reaction convinced Vince McMahon to pull the trigger on the match. Thanks to Pat Patterson's brilliant layout and booking, Hogan and Warrior delivered one of the best performances of either man's career. It was the perfect choice to headline WrestleMania 6, with Warrior pulling off the upset win. While his title reign didn't exactly live up to expectations, at least he and Hogan gave fans a true classic from that era.